I was in a position in the company where they needed me so badly that that put me in a high leverage position. Over time, I negotiated it with them where they would pay me more, but I would show up less. So they just took everybody's money and disappeared. Now I'm living out of my SUV just because the rents have been skyrocketing around here. Every month, rents go up and it seems like there's no end to it. My name's Jake Sievers. I'm 28 years old. I grew up in Chino Hills, California. So I've lived in Southern California all my life. And yeah, I have a kind of interesting relationship with money. For a lot of my life, I considered it I've oscillated between considering it really important to not that important. And I've always been trying to figure out my relationship to money. Is it something that I should orient my whole life around, where I'm like always trying to increase my income and saving and stuff like that? Or should I just go be more freewheeling with the wind and not worry so much about stuff and just believe in the abundance of the universe like people talk about and just wait for things to come my way? But yeah, I grew up in a pretty frugal family. So like my grandmother, when I was growing up, she was always like trying to find ways to save money, whether she was like recycling cans or like reusing paper plates in the kitchen and stuff like that. And she was always concerned with that.
That's very interesting.
So that had an impact on me for sure. But
sure. Great talking to you, Jake. Welcome to the podcast. And I heard you saying this relationship and your perception of money or what you think about money has changed. What I've seen is that attitude towards money typically changes with age. Typically, as a younger self, you may not have that much maturity and people feel like they need to be free and money is not everything. There is more to life. And as you start gaining years, you start figuring out that how important it is to practical life, and then you grow a different appreciation of money.
Yeah.
Was that your story, or you have frequently oscillated between one to other extreme?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, it hasn't really been a gradual change. Like it's been more of ups and downs, thinking it's the most important thing in the world. When you're around people that are like, oh yeah, we gotta make millions and get rich. And then other times being around more free-minded people that are like, no, I don't care about that. Like I'm just gonna live my life and do what I want. And I've gone back and forth between those two things.
Okay. That also makes sense. As humans, we do get influenced by the company we keep. And that's why even financially speaking, I know it's important all along, but financially speaking, it's important that you surround yourself with people that have similar ideology or similar thinking about money, finance, or being responsible about money as yourself. There is no one definition, but I would rather have you decide for yourself how you want to view money. So if you want to be a millionaire, you're better off being around people who want to be a billionaire, so that they will
share the same
right
ideals. Yeah.
But at least for now, seems like from what you said, seems like there are all kind of people in your life. You have exposure to everyone, and depending upon who is closer at what point, your thinking changes. So one takeaway is try to decide for yourself what you want. And then you don't cut off people, but you spend more time around people that align with your money philosophy.
People that share your values about and your ideals of like where you want to go in life. Yeah, I've been around different groups of people, and I think everybody has something that like they all have a piece of the puzzle, but whether it's the people that want to get rich or the people that don't care about that as much, they put more emphasis on other things. But I've definitely seen, like how you were saying, as I've gotten older, I've taken a more practical approach to things. But I think that's just a result of learning about this stuff more and more, just getting a more detailed understanding of how to do finance and stuff like that.
So that's where you are now. You're saying you feel like you have a more balanced head and a bit more appreciation of money at this time. Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
So how are you doing money-wise at this point in your life? How much are you making to start with?
So I would say with my regular job, like I probably make, I think two to 3,000 a month. And that's like a part-time job. And then if you add gigs onto that, maybe like another 1,000.
Okay.
So a total of maybe like 4K a month.
That's pretty good, actually. 4K a month. And you have I will assume that the part-time job, and we'll talk about what the job is, but is it a stable, predictable job?
Yeah, it's very regular.
Okay, regular job. So I off the bat, without getting into the details, I'm saying I like this approach. I have had another guest on the show just before you who is all he is doing is gigs, and it's working for him for now. But he spoke about how one day DoorDash just decided to delete his account because they thought something was a violation. And I keep telling people that if you want to go into gigs, use this to supplement your income. Don't just make it your sole source of income because it's so unpredictable.
Yes.
I like your approach where you have a stable income with which you can actually survive. 2 to 3K is good enough to survive, and then you're supplementing income with gigs. I commend you for taking that approach. I'm assuming that it was intentional.
I tried really hard to diversify my income because that job I was working at, I used to work 40 hours a week at that job, and I didn't like it because I was afraid. I thought I couldn't do anything else. So I went through just year after year doing this one job and not knowing what else I could do, and just feeling so cooped up in there and just trapped because I didn't know what else to do. So then when I discovered all kinds of gig work and the little side jobs I could do, I was so happy because then I could start adding more variety into my life.
That's excellent. And I commend you for doing that. This is the approach I suggest to everyone, because some people, let's put it this way, majority of people, 80-90%, not happy with their job, but they continue doing it because, like you said, they just don't know what else is out there, or will they be able to do anything else. And then there is the other extreme. They quit their job and they say, like, I'll go out and do something, with which they are exposing their financial life and maybe even their loved ones to a lot of uncertainty. If it's an option, I recommend what you are doing. Hang on to your full-time job. If possible, do gigs in addition to that. Or better still, if somebody has an option like you where you can reduce certain hours from your full-time job and then try out other things without completely losing the benefits of that stable income. That's the great approach. How did you plan this? Or two questions, right? One is, how did you mentally decide? You started touching upon a little bit in terms of you do need to diversify your income. Was it just an income decision, or also in terms of learning new skills and not depending solely on something? And second is, what kind of conversation you had with your employer? How did you convince them to let you go to 24 hours?
I was bored a lot in my job because there wasn't much happening from day to day. It was very stable and not very eventful. But the really cool thing about it, which is the reason why I stayed for so long, is it was really flexible. I could make my own hours, and my employers were super chill. If I didn't want to show up, I didn't even have to call out. I would just not show up. And so over time, I negotiated it with them where they would pay me more, but I would show up less. So I would do 5 days a week, 8 hours a day for a long time. And then I started reducing that. So now I only work like 4 days a week, 6 hours a day. But it was just a little bit of back and forth negotiating. But for the most part, they were pretty chill. So whatever I suggested, they just went with it. And I was in a position in the company where they needed me so badly that that put me in a high leverage position.
Awesome. And again, not everyone has that flexibility, but you never know until you ask. So
yeah,
making the demand and showing some flexibility yourself and then asking company for the flexibility, more likely than not, company would agree. Their first reaction, I don't know how yours was, but typically your bosses may want to shut down the idea because they just don't want to go through it. But if you insist, most of the companies will want to work with you, because hiring a completely new person and then training that person is much more expensive and time-taking for the company than trying to work out a deal with somebody who already knows his worth. So I'm sure what you're doing in 24 hours, a new guy, at least for a year or so, will only produce that much despite working 40 hours. Right?
Yeah, definitely.
So that was very smart. But what is the work that you do which has that much flexibility? I'm sure our audience will be interested.
Yeah, so I work as a glass blower. So I make components out of glass for bongs and water pipes and stuff like that. So the company I work for is a distributor, and then we just make tons of like bongs and pipes and distribute them to smoke shops. So we're really closely related to the cannabis industry. So that might be a reason why it's so chill and like that. But
so you think that everyone working in that industry is smoking joints while they work? Do you guys do that?
Not really, but it is a little bit less strict and controlled. But they're not high all the time.
Okay, that's interesting. And then I also
That's a big
see,
part of it.
yeah, I also see, just by the way you explained being a glass blower, it seems like a skill which will be somewhat niche, right? I don't think there are many of you out there. It will require some special skills, right?
Yeah. Yeah, like in America, there aren't really any places where you can learn glass blowing. You have to do an apprenticeship with somebody. You have to know somebody that knows how to do it, and they'll teach you. But they can only teach you what they know. So a lot of times it's a limited education. And I think there are universities for glass blowing, but they're all on the East Coast, and there's not that many of them. So I did an apprenticeship with somebody.
Okay. And that's somebody like, how did you find that out? Because I also want to know how somebody can get into an industry like this. So what was your story? Did you know them always, or you decided to pursue them? How did?
Right after I graduated high school, my friend's mom suggested to my friend and I that we go work at this place. It was a friend of hers, and he had this company where he was just making these glass components. We started working there, and the work was like, I think we got paid like $7.50 an hour at first, so not much at all. And it was just really like low grunt work, like we were doing really repetitive tasks. But I saw some upward mobility there, like a potential for that. And I was like, you know what, this shop sucks. My friend ended up not lasting there, but I was like, I'm just going to work really hard and see if I can move up the chain. And I impressed the boss there, and he offered me to do this apprenticeship with this guy that he had hired. And I was like, sure.
Okay.
And that was after about 8 months of working there.
Okay. So again, I can clearly see two major takeaways. One is that you had the right relationship. You had a friend with a mom who had some good references for you guys, right? So you stuck around and you benefited from that. And then second is that you are willing to work hard in the beginning for admittedly low pay and may not be great working conditions, but you could see the potential in the long run, which again,
Yeah.
you need a balance head to do that. Young kids, they don't like work, they'll quit the next day.
Yeah. I know everybody doesn't have that opportunity either, because if you work at a place like any starting wage place like McDonald's or like Staples or whatever, you don't have that upward mobility necessarily. Like you could work your way up to manager, you'll earn an extra 10 cents per hour. But I was lucky enough that I went to a place that was really entrepreneurial, and they were just trying out different things. And it was a competitive environment where if you could pull your weight, you would be able to be a valued member of the team.
Okay. And that's wonderful. And it's great that you got that opportunity. But I also wanted to chime in and tell this to everyone watching, that even if you're talking about places like McDonald's, typically they are a stepping stone for something else. Like people work there for some time, they move on to something else, which is all right. But even in those organizations, if for people who are willing to stay around and be committed, work long term, they do see growth. Now, you may have better opportunity if you really move around and plan your career strategically, right? So they may not be the best one, but there are many people who like move on from a $8 McDonald's job to, you'll find them working at $12 per hour job after 10, 15 years. If that is the trajectory, maybe even staying here, you could have done that and maybe even more. So because these companies also, they don't have lot many people who have experience working there in their industry and who stay around for long. People move on. So they are valued after a while. Experience is valued everywhere. But the problem is having that patience. So either you have a good plan for your career that I'll move on and this is how I'll go from this $8 to $25 and $50. If you have a plan, then that's great. But if you don't have a plan, then sometimes you should first explore the opportunity within your company before just taking up the next one, which will give you an hour, $1 an hour extra, right? So that's something which should be thought about. But great, it worked out for you. So that's awesome. And you said you are doing, making good money, working 24 hours. And then how are you using the rest of your time?
What's that? What do I do with the rest of my time? Aside from my main job, I do a lot of gig work. So I do acting sometimes, just random acting gigs. I'll be hired to be on a TV show or a YouTube video or something like that. And then tech research studies. So companies, Google will hire people just to try out equipment for them. And that can be pretty lucrative sometimes. And then I'll do clinical trials a little bit. I also sell stuff online, like I sell musical instruments on like the marketplace apps. So
I like that.
Just like
I like that you are trying a lot of variety of things and not limiting yourself to just one, because that's another problem, that sometimes we think ourselves that I'm good at something, And despite the market telling us that you probably are not best at it, or for some reason it's not appreciated, we just keep at it. And then almost like question ourselves that I have to be successful, and then just be plain unhappy in life. So since you're trying different things, I'm sure it will take care of seasonality. Sometimes something will click, something else will click the next month. And then you're also keeping your options open, right? And that way, some newer opportunities may also come your way because you are always looking. So that's...
I try to take on work that I think will help me develop skills that I wasn't getting at my job that I was doing for a long time. Because I was so scared. I was afraid this is all I'm ever going to be able to do. And there's so many other skills that I could be learning if I'm trying other stuff with more public facing stuff like communication and stuff like that. So I tried to go in that direction.
That's wonderful. Again, willing to put yourself out there is something which takes courage. But once you are able to do it, you find out that it's not that difficult once you start doing it. But majority of the people will just not do it. They will want to avoid any place which will require you to talk to people, communicate, and do things like that. That's interesting. So I do know about the medical research stuff and selling online, but doing this technical evaluation for companies like Google, how do you find gigs like that?
I guess in Los Angeles, there's just like a lot of stuff like that around because there's so many people here and there's so many companies just doing random stuff. And a lot of this stuff was shown to be by my girlfriend. Like she's a full-time gig worker. So she knows all the channels and pathways to find this stuff. And a lot of it is just being part of an email list. There are just like email lists you can get on and people will refer you. So a lot of it is referral based. And then if you get enough of those on your plate, you can end up with almost like a full-time schedule of going from gig to gig and picking up $100, $200 each day, just doing random stuff for maybe like 1 hour.
That's very interesting. So having the right connects and getting into the right list is the key. In general, people's experience...
I guess so. Or being internet savvy and being able to look for this stuff, which I'm not.
But you have the right connection. You said you have a girlfriend who is, and that's a team. You had a friend who took you to your job. You have a girlfriend who is getting you gig.
Yeah.
So
it's teamwork too. Yeah.
I'm sure you're putting a lot of effort, but you make the right connection, or you're able to identify what value people can bring in also. Sometimes you'll have folks like your girlfriend is on doing gigs, but there'll be many people in the world who will just not care about what she is doing, right? Or maybe even downlook her and not take care of her, but you probably took interest in what she is doing, and that's why she felt like, okay, she can share with you, bring you in. So again, this is something which when you take interest, not just spouse or girlfriend or people around you, it's just about taking interest, talking to them, finding out, may open doors for you. Right? That's networking. When you're talking to people, figuring out, that generally opens more doors. Again, not everyone does it, but if people do it, they do see benefit. You are an example of that. So that's great. But if there are people out there who are interested in things like that. Are there ways where they can get started in terms of getting on those lists, or are there any ways? Do you have any suggestion, or do you think
it's weird because you can find lists like that through weird channels, like just going on Craigslist and emailing a lot of people. And a lot of it is like weird people, weirdos and scams. But then sometimes you find somebody who is like really legit. And you're like, wow, I just got myself hooked up with extra supplemental income out of nowhere. So it's just a lot of times just reaching out to a lot of people and testing things out.
Okay. And that's fair. So again, what happens is sometimes we are constrained by our preconceived notions. Like you said, if I have this belief that everything on Craigslist is scam and weirdos, then I'll never try it out. But
and there is a lot.
It exists there for some reason. So you're right. There are certain genuine business that is happening over there. Otherwise, nobody will ever use it. But it's being used every day. So you need to have patience to sort the chaff and find things of value, but things can be found is what you're saying.
Yeah. And just the curiosity just to reach out and say, what is this actually? Because a lot of this stuff, you don't know until you try it.
Makes sense. Okay, that's pretty good advice. So, Jake, you are making, say, $4,000 a month. You said that you are in Southern California. So $4,000 a month may be good money for... say somewhere in Midwest, but I'm not sure if $4,000 a month is good enough for Southern California. What do you say?
It's not, I don't think it's a standard of living in Southern California. A lot of people are below the poverty line here. There's a lot of issues here.
Mm. So how are you managing with this? That's what, like, how are you managing your life now? Because with 4K, let's talk about your expenses, and let's talk about the major one, because major expenses are uh, food, rent, or mortgage, and then your transportation. So how are you handling those? And then we'll see how much is left with you.
I actually spend a lot on food, and I used to spend a lot on rent, but now I don't spend anything on rent because I decided to embrace a more nomadic lifestyle. So now I'm living out of my SUV.
Oh, you're living out in SUV full time? That's the only home you have?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
I transitioned into it, but it was a quick transition. But it was something I was planning on doing for a little while, just because the rents have been skyrocketing around here. Every month, rents go up, and it seems like there's no end to it.
Before you moved into your SUV, what was the last rent that you were paying in terms of amount, and what would be the same place renting for now?
I was renting an apartment, like a 1-bedroom, for $13.99 a month. And then I decided I didn't want to do that, so I started renting rooms in houses. We were just a bunch of people rent together. And yeah, so there was not a shared room, but I'd rent my own room.
Shared apartment, I mean.
$925 at one of them, and the other one was like $850 with just my own room with a shared bathroom. And those are pretty cool because I like interacting with a bunch of people.
Yeah, if you're single, you can do that. But the apartment, let's talk about what you're paying $13.99. What do you think that apartment will rent for now?
It's probably gone up. It's probably like $1,500. Whenever I look online, all the 1-bedroom I see are like $1,500 to $1,800.
Yeah.
For the most
So
part.
$1,500 to $1,800, which if you have to rent, I agree, would be a very significant portion of your income, right? Approaching 40 to 50%, which is very high. But you have taken some very unconventional route and you moved into an SUV. I find that very interesting. Let's talk about that. First of all, tell me, what car is that? What SUV is that?
So it's a modest Toyota RAV4.
Okay.
So there's some space. It's comfortable. I actually built a bed in the back, so I got like this wooden slab and then propped it up, and then I have a mattress on top, and I made window covers so I can black out the windows at night. And yeah, because I was paying so much for rent before, and I was thinking about it. I was like, I'm only paying for a place to sleep and to have a kitchen and a restroom, and I can sleep pretty much anywhere. And I also had a gym membership, so I was like, I already have showers and stuff. I might as well just cut out a lot of the fat. And I was thinking, like, you shouldn't be paying that much to sleep somewhere. It just didn't make sense to me.
There are ways to look at it. I can probably understand why you felt that way, and maybe in your particular scenario, the situation that you are in life, it may make sense temporarily. So I get it.
Yeah.
But there is a reason.
It's not possible for everyone.
People live in homes. So I find it even curious you made this decision to stay in SUV.
There's some advantages to living in a home, for sure.
There is. So you said for restroom and shower, you have a gym membership. So that probably means that you're going to gym multiple times a day, which probably...
Yeah, and I like working out and stuff. So
yeah, it's working out for your health. Okay. And then what do you do for... First of all, how do people... Are a lot of people doing there in California, like your friend circle, people... Are a lot of people doing this?
Yeah. A surprising number of people.
Because housing is an issue.
I meet people every day.
They've been reading about it, that housing is an issue. And obviously, this is better than being out on the street. And unfortunately, there are people who are on the street. It's definitely better than that. You are more in control. But it's also a sad commentary on where we are, where people are forced to do this, not because they love doing this, just because the rents are so unaffordable. So that's a challenge. Yeah. Because, like I said, you're making $4K a month. It will be a pretty decent salary anywhere else in the US, but in California, you're forced to live in a car.
And I could afford to rent a place. I could rent an apartment, but I just feel like I get so much more freedom financially doing this. And I'm a minimalist anyway. Like I try to reduce the amount of stuff I have regardless. And I know that I had the luxury of kind of choosing this lifestyle. Not everybody does. So some people are literally forced. They have no other option. They have to, they can't afford a place to live. And it's sad.
Yeah, it is. Okay. And then where do you park a car like this? Do you have a fixed place or do you move around?
I just go wherever I want, but I usually stay around Los Angeles. It's just my area where I'm comfortable being. And usually in the suburbs. Sometimes I go to the beach.
But you are able to
pretty much in
park
here.
parking lot and stay the night?
Yeah, on the street or anything. Because it's very stealthy, like nobody notices. But at the same time, there's so many people doing it. If you go to the beach, there's all kinds of vans and stuff where it's obvious that's somebody's full-time residence. And there's nothing, it can't be stopped. It's just like a big part of life in California that a lot of people don't know about.
Yeah. What about safety? Did you have any safety concern doing this? Do you have any incidents that you had to face being out there?
No, not really. Before I did it, I was terrified. I thought it would just be hell. I thought either I would get arrested or the homeless person would break my window at night and try to rob me, but nothing's ever happened, luckily.
Okay, yeah. Luckily.
Yes.
That's nice.
I take some precautions.
Okay, so you said that this is also a choice because if not a full apartment, you can definitely afford to rent a room like you used to. But this is more of a choice. So that tells me that you watch your money and you want to be, call it frugal or mindful of how you're spending your money. Tell me one more time, what would be your expenses and how much money are you able to save? Because you have taken care of your biggest expense like this.
How much am I able to save?
Yeah, what are your key expenses and then are you able to save any money?
So my key expenses, I think my biggest expense is food. Because I don't have a kitchen and my girlfriend and I like to eat well. So we go out to restaurants all the time. So that's my biggest expense, food. And then just things like gas and like phone, car insurance. I think that's about it.
So I'm assuming transport also would be a bigger expense because that's your home as well. Like you said, gas, insurance, and the upkeep of the car. You can't have
gas. Yeah, gas you already use. Yeah.
Okay. So how much do you think
I'm able to,
you're spending and saving?
I think spending, I don't know if I haven't looked at it too closely. I think I'm probably spending like probably about $1,500 a month in total. Maybe a little more. And saving, no, probably a little more than that, like $2,000. That would be my expenses. And then I looked at it last month and I was able to save $1,200. So that was okay.
Okay. But if you bring 4,000 a month, then you should be able to save almost up to 2,000. I know that gigs are variable, so a particular month may not, but
yeah, it varies.
If you limit your expenses to 2,000, that means you have an ability to save up to 50% of your income if you're able to make up to 4K. So anywhere between 20 to 50%, which is incredible. That too with the kind of salary you're bringing in. When you were living in apartments and all, were you still able to save, or at that point you had no savings?
I think I might have been able to save a little bit, but not that much.
So how does your finances, like, how do they look now? Do you have some saving built up? Do you have any investments, any retirement?
Yeah, I have my savings were dwindling for a long time. Ever since I've been really reduced all my expenses, I've been able to save like 12,000. So, and that's pretty good. But I want to go ahead and reinvest that into something better down the line. But I'm not really
sure. But do this, Jake. You have a good starting point. You're not too old, and for some reason you have decided that this lifestyle is working for you. At least for some time, if you're able to do this, keep a little higher savings rate. Then you can build up a financial cushion for yourself. And later on, even if your life sees change, you probably know it, but it's completely different having some financial cushion, some money in bank or savings. Gives you a lot of freedom to try out new things, to live the life the way you want and not rush into decisions that you'll end up regretting down the line.
Yeah.
The first order of the business is typically an emergency fund, which in your case, you already have done a good amount of savings. Between 3 to 6 months is what is advised. Since you live in a car, which is also your private residence, right? I should not even say it may break down. It will break down. It's only a matter of time. So you need to plan for some emergency expenses as well, right? So this 10 to 12,000 is what I will advise you to call your emergency fund. That's the kind of money you need to have easy access to. So you should not really invest it in things where you cannot take it out or which is very speculative in nature. Make sure you put this either in a high yield savings account or a money market account, things which are relatively safer and you can take money out if you really need. Like you said, if your car breakdowns and unfortunately it's a $2,000 expense, you don't have an option but to take that. So you don't want to get into a credit card debt at that point to do that repair. If you have your funds, you can use those. So do that. But so that money should be an emergency fund. But going forward, any new savings that you'll do, the next 1,200 to 2,000 that you'll save, you should have a plan to invest those. And then that investment typically should be done in a stock market, diversified equity fund. It can be an index fund if you are aware of that. But some sort of diversified equity fund in the market will serve you well in the long run. So you should start thinking about your long-term savings and build a good savings there in stock market, which is not just money put aside, but has some potential to grow given a long-term time horizon.
Yeah. So just looking at how the savings, I want to break it down and want to put some of that into the emergency fund and then some of it into investments and of various kinds. I'm still learning about how to do all that.
And so what I was telling you is that emergency fund is the first order of business. And since you already have some money, you are in a good position that you can just set it aside. So you don't save for emergency fund now. You have already saved it, but keep that money safely. Any new income coming in, then you can almost fully invest. You don't again have to divide this new 12 to 2,000, 200. You can almost fully invest because you have this 12,000 which you can dip into if there is an emergency. So you are in a good position. Everyone else has to first think about building an emergency fund if they don't have any. But looks like you have done good for yourself by saving that amount.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That seems like a good idea.
And then again, at some point, I'm assuming that you will have to move out of your car, right? And at that point, you may not be able to save as much.
Yeah.
Couple of questions though. You are good at your work and you have flexibility. You have started looking at gigs, so you're building up additional skills. I know that you have always been in Southern California, but have you ever considered moving to a place which will let you save more money and do better financially?
Yeah, I have considered. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Yeah, Southern California living is just not that great, and there's a lot of things I like about it. That's why I'm here.
I'm sure.
But it's crowded, it's expensive, high cost of living, stuff like that. And I think about moving out to other places. I also like nature. I want to be closer to nature. I live in the city. I think the thing that holds me back is all of my work and all the jobs I know how to do is here. So all the ways that I know how to make money are in the city. So I think that kind of keeps me bound to the city.
Okay.
But I do want to move out.
Yeah. So you have diversified set of income. So some of these things may also be done online. And then for your job as well, I know it's a pretty niche skill. Not everyone does it. But if you look closely enough, there may be other companies who might be doing it from a different place. So I think you need to, if you're willing and flexible, not everyone can do it. But if you are, then that definitely can, again, be a big positive for your financial life in the long run. If you can place, increase your savings rate or reduce your expenses. And frankly speaking, now is the time to do it when you are younger, because both in terms of responsibility, like down the line, if you have kids and all, it makes it much more difficult to make any move. And even financially, if you have savings now, then those savings have a lot more time to grow in terms of your investments and all. So the sooner you do it, better it will be for you. The other option, though, is that you stick to the place you want, but figure out ways to dramatically increase your income. That's another option. Those are the
That's a pathway I'm looking at. I'm trying to figure out ways to increase my income, and then that's my main focus right now.
Tell me a little bit about your upbringing or growing up years. What was your relationship with money, and did it really influence in any way how you are with money now?
I think it did, because I'm like a minimalist, like I said, and growing up, I didn't grow up like poor, but money was scarce with my parents and stuff like that. And as a kid, a lot of times, if I want something, I would ask my parents for it, and they say, "Oh, we can't afford that." So I learned to make do with less, and I think that I think that does play a role in how I approach life now.
So both parents had similar money habits or convictions.
Yeah, my mom had a little bit more money than my dad because she worked as a registered nurse. And then I think my dad always had like financial troubles. My parents weren't together when I was growing up, but they lived close by, so I saw both of them. And my dad had a lower standard of living, and he was always had some kind of issues with money. He just seemed really beat down, like, oh, life is so hard. I don't know, that kind of thing.
Mm.
And my mom was more financially independent.
I see. But you think that being responsible with money, you got more from your mom and grandmother, right?
Yeah. I don't know though, because my dad's not necessarily irresponsible with money, but he just never had much. And it's something I never really understood. I think maybe he just didn't go out and try enough things, or I really can't say.
The reason I ask this question is I'm always interested in terms of how uh, different kids react differently to what they hear about money, what they see their parents doing. You can have kids in the same household growing up with the same parents, taking away different lessons from how they see their parents behaving around money. So that's what I was trying to see. That did you see something and make some determination? This is how I'm going to do it, or this is not how I'm going to lead my life around money.
I think I definitely wanted to not view things the same way as my father, because I think he had a pretty negative outlook on life in general. So I wanted to take more risks, but at the same time, I come from pretty risk-averse family. I think it's more about being cautious and careful. I think that kind of mentality rubbed off on me a lot, and maybe made me scared to go out and try new things.
But you are trying new things. So probably it might have taken some time, but you have done well for yourself.
It definitely took some time.
Okay. Jake, can we quickly talk about the issues with landlords? You were saying that also influenced your decision to sort of move out. You have a couple of discussions. What were those?
So I rented a room. The first time I went out and lived on my own, I rented a room, and actually I had an apartment before that with somebody else. But when I first rented my own room, it was like $925 for the room, which I think I was overpaying. And I was renting out from this company that's based in Silicon Valley. And during the pandemic, they were just really unreliable. I don't think it was related to the pandemic. I think it was just a poorly managed company. But one day I came home from work and a pipe had burst in my room and the whole room was flooded, and my bed was soaked and everything. And I emailed this company saying, hey, can you return my rent for this month? It was October 2nd, I think. And I was like, I can't stay here this month, so can you return the rent? And they never got back to me. And a few days later, they sent out this long email saying basically, oh, the pandemic's been so hard on us and we haven't been able to. Basically, we're insolvent. We have no money and we can't pay anybody. I think they owed me like $1,500 at that point.
They just kept your money. And did they repair the apartment, the flooded apartment? Not promptly?
I had to get out of there. I don't know. Nobody came out to repair it. So they just took everybody's money and disappeared.
Wow.
Yeah.
For all you know, they might have tricked the owner also. They may not even own the apartment. Maybe they were the managers, and
they were like an intermediary between the owner and...
so the owner might be suffering because of poorly managed apartment, like repairs not done or flooding not repaired, and the renters. That's very strange.
Yeah.
So you just lost your money. Was there an agreement that you could rely on to try and recover?
No, there was nothing, because they basically said that since they had gone bankrupt, there was no path to pursue to hold them legally responsible. They just dissolved the company and disappeared.
And you also had bad luck that there was this flooding. Otherwise, you could have held on to the apartment for some time without paying rent, and that way it might have even worked out for you.
Yeah.
That was plain luck. But was that the only time you had a bad experience with landlords?
No, the next place I lived at, I also had a bad experience with the landlord there. So when I moved in, we were going to sign a lease agreement, but he forgot, and I didn't remind him. Maybe I should have. But then later on, my girlfriend started staying over occasionally, And then he started coming around and saying, who's this girl? Does she live here? And it says in your lease agreement that you can't have guests over. And I said, I didn't sign a lease agreement. And then he got really mad and huffed up. And he came and he was like, okay, you're going to sign a new lease agreement and I'm going to raise your rent by $150 a month. And I said, no, I'm not doing that. And it turned into this conflict. We were both stubborn about it. I said, I'm not going to pay an extra amount. I'm not going to sign that. And then he gave me a 30-day notice. And so I moved out promptly after the 30 days. And he decided to keep my security deposit just because he was a jerk because of the disagreement. I guess he was bitter about it.
And you also decided not to pursue that, right? Trying to claim like he had excuse.
Yeah. And that was the point where I was fed up and I was like, I'm going to do something else now. I'm not going to rent anymore. I've had it with these people.
And that's why you moved your car. See, that's one, you had some example of why people prefer owning home over renting, because while renting gives you certain flexibilities, it also comes with these quirks and restrictions that landowner can raise rents when they want. They may not repair your house. They may do this crazy stuff on you. Do you have a plan that, do you see yourself becoming a homeowner down the line? Or I'm curious, how do you like see your situation changing eventually? I'm sure you're not planning to live in your car all your life. So what is the path?
Yeah.
See yourself renting again or buying a house, or what is it?
I would definitely like to buy a house. I'm sure a lot of people would, but I don't see a clear pathway for that. I think for this generation, it's just so hard to figure out how you're gonna do that.
I agree. And then that's really unfortunate. Like you said, for this generation, the idea is people are wondering that if nobody is buying the house, why house prices or cannot buy the house, why house prices are still high. I think it's a collective movement where industries is there and it's trying to make everyone a renter rather than a homeowner, honestly. So prices will remain high and will be priced out and they will eventually just rent homes and you lose so much.
I agree with that.
So that's right. But you may have a path to become a homeowner if you make a call to move from there. We spoke about that. That makes it easier, relatively speaking, than raising your income profile and saving enough to buy a house. That may be an option. But you are also telling me that you had entertained an idea of that nomadic lifestyle where you move out of LA, but still not get into a fixed place, put your roots down.
Maybe. Yeah. I was considering saving up for an RV and then my girlfriend could come along with me. I think that'll be cool.
But you plan the RV to stay in an RV park or you plan to move around the US?
Yeah, we travel the US and Canada and stuff.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, again, it comes with its own challenges, but if you can do it and still figure out a way to do some of your gigs and other work while on the road, then it can be pretty satisfying, at least early on. Again, I personally don't see this as something you can sustain for 40 years.
Not a forever thing, but maybe for a few years and then settle down somewhere permanent.
Is this still a target, saving up for an RV?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So they can...
If it works. It's something I'm still figuring out, though. I got to think about it more.
Okay. So like we said, you have a good savings rate, but you need to decide your goals and then appropriately divide your goals. I will strongly recommend that you first create a cushion of investments as well. You already have an emergency fund. So for next several months, you put like another 10,000-20,000 in investment so that you have something to look forward to. And then if you have other goals like saving for an RV or something else, a trip, you start collecting money for that too. But anything that you want to do in next 2 years, for example, you need to save money and put it either in a bank account or something very safe. You cannot put any speculative investments.
Okay. That's giving me some clarity.
Sure. I think we're almost done. You have any questions for me, Jake?
Not really. This has been actually a pretty helpful conversation because with the way that you structured this conversation, I realize there are certain aspects of my situation that I haven't given that much thought to. So I think...
Thank you for that.
I really appreciate it.
I appreciate that too. I'll do this. I'll ask you just 2 or 3 quick questions. Give me a quick answer. Those questions will also help you frame some of your thoughts in terms of what is important for you. So it's more of a light-hearted question. Tell me, if money was not an issue for you, what is that one thing where you will want to spend maximum money on? What I meant is if you have good amount of money, you don't have to figure out from where money will come. Then what is it that you would want to spend maximum money on?
My family. I want to start a family.
Okay. So you want to start a family of your own, right? Like marry your girlfriend
Yeah.
or your family. So that also tells,
Put everything.
yeah. So that also tells me that at this time, that is a constraint that you are grappling with, right? About how to take that big step forward. Okay. But I'm glad that you have a clarity on what your priority is. What is one thing in last 2 years? What is one thing which you actually spend largest amount of money on?
Probably food.
Food.
Restaurants. Yeah.
Okay. Food and restaurant.
Buffets and stuff like that.
Yeah, but do you remember any one particular purchase? Because restaurant is more of an on. Was there a
My car.
car?
Yeah.
We didn't talk about it, but is it a new car? Did you buy a new?
No, I didn't. I bought it with almost 100,000 miles on it.
Okay, Jake, if there is anything I can help you with going forward, feel free to reach out if there is any advice which you think my thoughts will be helpful. But I appreciate you doing this. All the best.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's been a great combo.